person on the stage that didn't train to be number one in 2018, they should not be on this stage. Yes, I did say all those. You saw the Jay Cutler interview. I was just speaking facts.
The 2018 Mr. Olympia came down to a closely contested competition between challenger Sean Flexitron Roden and defending champion Phil the Gift Heath. As they stood next to each other in the Orleans Arena at the Las Vegas Convention Center, waiting for the final results on Saturday night, the weight of the moment and their one-on-one battle filled the air. Today, we look into the match and everything that surrounded it. The results. After a brief pause for dramatic effect, the big reveal started off with two words that hadn't been uttered after the weekend's main event in 8 years at the time. And new. With that announcement, Roden pulled off one of the most improbable upsets in the contest's history to defeat the 7-time champ and become just the 14th man to claim bodybuilding's most prestigious award. For the win, Roden took home the coveted Eugen Sandow trophy and a cool $400,000 in prize money. Roden's winnings were part of a record $1.4 million in cash prizes, the biggest purse in the Mr. Olympia contest's 53-year history at that point of time. Heath's second-place finish netted him $150,000, while Rolly Winklar from Curaçao, who won the inaugural People's Champion Award, finished third to earn $100,000. Ghanaian William Bonak's fourth-place showing resulted in a check for $55,000, and Brandon Curry rounded out the top 5 and went home with $45,000. The heated exchange. 2 days before Roden and Heath squared off on stage, flexing side by side, they were both engaged in a heated exchange at the event's press conference. When asked to confirm his non-flattering comments about Heath's front double bicep and lat spread poses being crap, Roden confirmed that he meant them. "Yes, I did say all those," to host Dennis James on the dais. "I was just speaking facts." Unbothered, Heath responded in kind. "I have nothing to say to him," he said. "Talk is cheap." Roden went then on to walk his talk during the prejudging on Friday night, where his conditioning and striated abdominal muscles clearly stood out on stage next to Heath, who seemed to have issues with his midsection. Although Heath dried out in the 24 hours up to the final round and wowed the judges with his signature world-class back double bicep pose, it was obvious that he hadn't overcome the midsection deficiency with the judges, and that Roden was standing on the doorstep of history. In the end, Roden, with his impressive front double bicep, front lat spread, and abdominal and thigh poses, was dry in all the right places, and made his clear-cut case to knock out the champ. With the loss, Heath failed to tie the record of bodybuilding greats Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman, but he is still in great company, having tied Arnold Schwarzenegger's total of 7 titles. And even though there was no love lost between Heath and Roden, the latter showed deference to the outgoing champion on his historic night. "Phil is no slouch," Roden told host Bob Ciccarello. "I've been chasing him since 2012, so I know in the back of my mind that he's Mr. Saturday Night. He could come in here and look his all-time best. But again, I looked at Chris Lewis and he said, 'You know what, Sean? You'll be better than you were yesterday.' And if that man believes in me, I'm good."
If you're training to be number 2, you should stay home.
I have nothing to say to him. Talk is cheap. He'll find out tomorrow.
I think all of these guys got to get through me to get to Phil.
Tomorrow, we will see something different. Something different. That's it.
Last year, he said, "I'm going to show you guys something you have never seen before. I promise." That's it. I don't have to talk bad about anybody to make myself feel good. I don't have to stand up and say, "I'm 7-time or something." I got Sandows at my house that let me know that.
The first time. At 43 years old, Roden tied Chris Dickerson's record as the oldest competitor to win the Sandow for the first time, but he left no doubts about defending his title the next year. "I'll be back," said the new champion known as a man of few words. The debate about why Sean Roden defeated Phil Heath is still happening around the world. However, unlike past Olympias where most controversies were justified, little can be argued about this year's Olympia decision. Nobody saw it coming before the show, and most people assumed Phil Heath would tie for most Olympia wins ever. However, there was a new champ in town, Sean Roden. The question is, how and why was Sean Roden able to convincingly beat Phil Heath? Let's judge based on a few important factors. Roden's setback. 2018 had been a roller coaster for Sean Roden. Earlier that year, Roden had to drop out of Arnold Classic citing health issues. Before the Arnold Classic, Sean was sent to the hospital due to some extreme dehydration, 2 ulcers, and a serious case of the flu. To make things worse, Sean's hemoglobin level was at 4, which should normally be around 14. Roden lost a lot of blood due to the 2 ulcers bleeding into his intestine. 6 blood transfusions helped Roden's body reach levels where it could produce blood on its own. The out-of-control bubble gut. Shawn Roden has arguably one of the best sets of abdominals in the game today. His midsection brought back the days of Flex Wheeler, while of course being more conditioned and larger. Phil's midsection, on the other hand, has slowly creeped up on him to the point of no return, while Shawn Roden was aesthetic as you can be. No bubble guts in sight. Even between poses, Phil's gut was just all around unappealing, and that carried over into the final judgment. Shawn Roden had better conditioning. Conditioning is something that Shawn Roden clearly beat Phil in. He was overall more striated and harder looking. He looked phenomenal, in fact, and everything flowed like a perfect wind on a spring morning. Phil was playing the size game, and although he has better genetics in many areas, hence the name The Gift, he was simply outclassed. Now, Phil is known to be possibly the most gifted bodybuilder to ever walk on stage. His 3-dimensional physique has allowed him to defeat the best of the best on the Olympia stage. However, the package he brought that year wasn't enough to prevail over Shawn Roden's proportional and symmetrically balanced physique. Shawn Roden brought incredible symmetry. Like mentioned before, Shawn Roden brought symmetry, and there was no doubt about it. He looked like a 90s bodybuilder, but in many ways even more impressive. For how Shawn's body was shaped, he did an amazing job at creating a balance between his strong and weak points. Phil doesn't really have weak points aside from his midsection, the big problem that year obviously, but Shawn's weak points were obvious in his lack of comparable, in regards to Phil Heath's, unworldly muscle shape and fullness, triceps, chest, and back development. However, it is good to see that that year's contest was judged on balance, symmetry, and conditioning rather than from the back poses. Shawn Roden's posing was on point. Posing routines can prove to be a double-edged sword. You could expose your weakness, or you can learn how to accentuate your strengths. Shawn Roden did the latter quite effectively, and as a result, his posing routine was more visually pleasing than Phil's. Heck, Flexitron could have won the Olympia just from his silhouette as he was walking on stage. He looked that good. Phil Heath is a great champion, and his posing has been good enough to win him many titles, but Shawn's physique, again, had already won the show before it started. We simply needed a new champ, and Shawn delivered. If it weren't for politics, we'd have a new Mr. Olympia more often. However, Shawn displayed all of the great characteristics of a deserving champ. He not only had the physique, but he was also a good ambassador for the sport. It would have been very disappointing for many people around the world if Phil would have won his 8th Sandow when it wouldn't have been well deserved. Who knows what his future holds, but for the time, the focus has been diverted to someone else. Shawn Roden's ability to overcome his obstacles and come back and shock the bodybuilding world was nothing short of a miracle. It says a lot about his work ethic and determination, as well as his belief in himself when the impossible seemed all too likely. We surely miss the tantalizing sensation. May he rest in peace. That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.